Hi again, and thanks for being here today. Today, I want to talk to you about the Cathars, one of my favorite groups to discuss. Before I do want to mention that I'm presenting all of these various groups and their beliefs and their history from a historical point of view. I'm not attempting to persuade you to follow or believe any particular doctrine or way of being spiritual. I hope that what I present will add to your knowledge and will be enjoyable to you as you learn the different ways people have approached spirituality and religion and how some of our modern thoughts developed. So the Cathars were a group from the 12th century in southern France. We trace their doctrines, their ideas, back to Manichaeism, to the prophet Mani, who promoted a dualistic point of view about the world in which we live. And then more directly to the Bogomils, and more about that later, but I'll put the addresses of my videos on those two groups, the Manichaeans and the Bogomils, in the description box below here. I also want to mention that sometimes they're called Cathari, and this comes from a Greek word which meant the pure ones. The Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church of the time, saw the Cathars as heretical and as competition, and decided, as time passed, to exterminate this group, this religious group known as the Cathars. They're also sometimes called the Albigensians, and that comes from the town of Albi in France, which was one of their centers of religion and community. So let's take a close look at these Cathars. The Cathars had a religious hierarchy divided into three designations, and the highest of these were the priests and the bishops. They were also called the perfect or the perfecti, parfait, and these men and women lived simply. They had no personal possessions. They had no power to impose taxes or penalties on the followers of the faith. They regarded men and women as equal, so they were able to hold equal positions in the hierarchy. And these were aspects of the faith that really appealed to the peasant population of southern France, who felt quite imposed upon by the Roman Catholic Church. The second group were the believers. Now, these were people who were not separated as the priests were. The priests and priestesses lived separated lives. These, the followers or the believers, this group was working toward that, but they still had much interaction with the world outside. They lived very common lives with their neighbors, and yet they were working toward the role of perfect. And then finally, there were sympathizers. Now, these were people who had not actually embraced the faith, but they were supportive of the Cathars and their communities. Well, Cathars rejected the teachings of the Catholic Church, and many, in fact, most of the books of the Hebrew and Christian Bible. They criticized the church because of its hypocrisy and its greed for all of the lands and wealth that the church had accumulated. So, not surprisingly, the Cathars were condemned by the church. And we will see as we go a little bit deeper into their history that the church did everything it could to wipe out the Cathars in what has been historically known as the Albigensian Crusade. And the years of that crusade are 1209 to 1229. So for today, let me look a little bit closer and chat with you just a bit about some of their beliefs that differed from the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox churches. Well, the first one is they believed in the feminine principle of the deity. That is what is called in the Hebrew writings the Sophia, or the wisdom of God. And this idea that God is very much a feminine as well as a masculine principle led to their idea of the equality of the men and women in the church. And of course, the Catholic Church is patriarchal. All positions of authority, in fact, at that time, all positions of any kind are held by men. So this belief in the feminine principle encouraged equality in their communities. The second, and a major difference between Orthodoxy and Catharism, is their belief in reincarnation. Now, just like other Gnostics, the Cathars, at least some of the groups, had a myth about how humans came to be as we are and what our purpose is. And their myth was, and this is just a really brief 2-line summary, that souls, spirit beings, had fallen from heaven or from the spiritual kingdom and had ended up in physical human bodies. And this soul has the purpose then of understanding where they came from and returning once again to the spiritual kingdom. And this they felt might take many lives. So Cathars then and now have a firm belief in reincarnation. This soul is going to continually be reborn until it has reached the point, like the perfecti, of renouncing this world completely, and then they're ready to escape incarnations. So that is a huge difference. Another was vegetarianism. Now, the perfect ones ate a vegetarian diet. The believers were allowed to eat fish, and of course, so were the sympathizers. They did not have dietary restrictions. But the perfecti ate a vegetarian diet. They also practiced celibacy. Celibacy was encouraged generally, even amongst the believers and the sympathizers, because the Cathars saw the birth of a human being as another soul being trapped in a human body, having to go through the struggles of life to attempt to reach gnosis, and the point of being able to renounce this earthly life to be ready to return totally to the spiritual life. So childbearing, of course, was left up to the individual, and that was very different again from the Roman Church, which at that time especially promoted that women should have as many children as possible, and that sexual activity was for the sole purpose of procreation. Well, the Cathars didn't see it as a good thing, forcing women to have more children than was healthy for them, or more children than the family desired. And so they allowed their women to practice forms of birth control. And the church, of course, was definitely against that. And then they were simple people. Even the priests participated in manual labor. They honored manual labor. Many of the priests, as well as the lay people, worked as weavers. And this was so different from what the Orthodox priests did, who, yes, separated themselves from the common people, but were just saw themselves as a higher class than the common people, and didn't relate well to the peasants, where these simple Cathar priests related very well to the common folk. And this was so attractive that Pope Innocent III at one point thought that 80% of the Catholics in name only, that the Catholics in southern France were either Cathars or Cathar sympathizers. And some of these sympathizers were not just peasants, but were wealthy landowners and well-known people. So this was quite a threat to the control of the church over the peasant population in this area. So let me say, before I give you any more detailed information, that Cathars are Gnostic Christians. And I've talked a lot in the past about Gnostics and their myths and their beliefs and some of the practices. And we've actually studied some of the books here on this channel, some of their writings. And if you check the playlist, which I'll also give you the address for in the description, the playlist entitled Gnostics, there's going to be a lot of similarity between the Gnostics and the Cathars. Cathars are Gnostics. All Cathars are Gnostics, but not all Gnostics are Cathars. And so some Gnostics have beliefs different than the Cathars, but all of the Cathars, their beliefs are very Gnostic in flavor. And also, before I go any further, I want to make it really clear, I hope to anyway, that the basis of all of the Cathars' activity and actions were not to fight with the church. In fact, their simple life, they pretty much went their own way. They were not confrontational with the Pope or, setting up big churches and temples or cathedrals that would be in competition with Orthodoxy. They met simply in homes and in the forests. When the Inquisition happened, many of them met in caves. They had to hide in caves. The bottom line of their faith, as they saw it, was love, unconditional love for all people. And so that meant their neighbors, it meant women and children, as well as important men. It meant the people beyond the Cathar community. They were so loving and servant oriented, giving and helpful in the community, that it's often said that their faith spread not by what they believed so much as by their actions, by the care and love that they showed to the community. And anyone today interested in studying about the Cathars and the Cathar beliefs should probably know that you're going to zero in on two things. And one is love, loving yourself and loving all other people, loving the planet and everything on it, and reincarnation, the fact that you are a soul that is on a journey back to the good life in the spirit world. So it's a very spiritual religion. And that's why they don't have so many of the rituals and other things that had developed in Orthodoxy. They don't have infant baptism. They don't have the communion feast. And we'll see next in some of the up and coming videos what rituals they did have. It's difficult sometimes to talk about these ancient belief systems because when the Orthodox Church wiped them out, they would also destroy their writings if they had any available. They would destroy the writings and they would kill the people. We saw when we looked at the Waldensians that they burned down their churches. Well, Cathars didn't build churches. But all the information we get about them is from the inquisitors, the people who were questioning them on the threat of death, horrendous death, if they didn't renounce their faith and return to the correct faith, the correct beliefs of the Orthodox Church. So we don't know if they kept accurate records. We don't know if the people always told the truth because out of fear of torture, perhaps they said what the inquisitor wanted to hear, or they exaggerated, or they failed to tell things. So we do have information about them, but it is difficult to pinpoint the accuracy of the historical record left by the church for all of these people. I hope that you've enjoyed our first glimpses as we penetrate the world of the Cathars. The Albigensian faith is quite intriguing and gives us a lot of insight, not only into the way they thought, but into the medieval world and the way life was at that time. We're going to look deeper into their faith and some of their practices. I hope to be able to recommend some books to you in the future. We're also going to look at some of the modern day Cathars and how they believe today. Where they don't have an organized religion, most Cathars reject organized religion. And if they are in an organized religion, they maintain their Cathar beliefs within that faith. I do want to recommend a really good website, not a website, a YouTube channel from a modern Cathar. It's called Cathar Love. That's Cathar Love. The gentleman's name is Johnny Bynum, and he is very informative. There are over 150 videos there about Catharism. So it is a really in-depth study into lots and lots of the different aspects of it. And I'm sure if you're interested in modern Cathars, that you'll find his videos very, very informative. As always, I hope that if you like this video, you'll give it a thumbs up, and please leave your comments and questions, and I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Next Saturday, I hope to be able to put up our second installment about the Cathar faith, and we'll learn a little bit more of their history that time and what actually happened to the Cathars. And in the meantime, wherever you are in the world, I know that you're being threatened by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I hope with my whole heart that you stay safe and healthy this week and can be here to join me again next time. Have a good one. I'll see you then.